Hey there guys, Music Fan here, how you guys doing? We're going to go through a really quick track by track review of the album original soundtracks 1 by the band, or rather the group, Passengers. Technically, Passengers is a makeup name for the collaboration between the band U2 and ambient music pioneer Brian Eno. Brian Eno, you especially have to know his name. He is the premier godfather of ambient music, and really the godfather and the innovator of this kind of music, which is, unlike rock and roll music, is really much more textural and a lot more laid back and atmospheric than anything rock and roll orientated. And of course, Brian Eno first collaborated with U2 with their fourth album, The Unforgettable Fire, which of course lended itself to producing the Joshua Tree and also Achtung Baby. Before a track-by-track review, let's go through a really short description of Passengers, and it was really conceived with the idea of, originally the original idea for Passengers was to create a soundtrack for a 1996 movie called The Pillow Book. Eventually that did not pan out so well, and so Brian Eno came up with the idea that instead of making a soundtrack for a film, instead let's make songs that contribute to a particular film or a soundtrack to a particular film. Really, a majority of these tracks, save for the tracks Your Blue Room, Miss Sarajevo, and 1 Minute Warning, are mostly imaginary. They are mostly titles used as a concept or used as an idea for the recording of each and every track off this album. And it's a completely different album because a lot of these tracks, because they have like the title name of the movie associated with them, even though all except 3 of them are really imaginary, kind of contributes to how cinematic all these tracks really are. And it's a much different album than anything else. This is more a introduction or a experimentation introduction to 1997's pop, and that was basically the idea of preparing the ground for that particular album. But we'll go with that album review later. But for now, let's go into all the tracks off of here really quickly. First track, United Colors. This track is really unique in the sense that it really starts off with like these really small electronic tones in the beginning, and then the next thing you get is like, I don't know if this is a trumpet or a horn, but you get it almost feels like you're in, say for example, Tokyo, Japan, and you hear a bullet train just pass right by you and just kind of goes off. And it's an interesting track to start off. It really lends to the feeling that this is not a normal album in the sense, it's not a normal album in the sense of U2's canon discography. The rest of these tracks have no verse chorus structure to them. These are more tracks that lends to an atmosphere than anything songwriting orientated. But United Colors really starts off this album off, and it has a really pretty cool guitar part near the end of this track. It's a weird opener, but it's pretty good. Slug. This one I really like. I like how Bono's vocals is not really trying to be operatic or being full open voice, but instead he's making more use of the lower register of his voice with this particular track. This track also is pretty great because it has a very distinct rhythmic melody in its melodic structure in this particular track. I also like this track because it has a bit of a like ding 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 ding. You can't get it by me saying it, but when you listen deeply into the track and you hear that little effect in the background, it really creates a texture with this song. And again, like United Colors, is pretty cool. Your Blue Room, one of my favorites off this album. Like, this track is very it has a relaxed, very airy vibe to it. And of course, like, the beginning has this really sweet organ. I don't know if it's Brian Eno that's playing that organ, but this is an example where the dynamic between Brian Eno in U2 really works. And this track is like, when you take the lyrical content, it could either mean a conversation between you and your loved one, your lover, or it could mean between you and your higher power, depending on which that is. Either way, this track's atmosphere is mellow, but it's pretty awesome. It's a pretty cool song. It's not a song that's really noted in U2's canon, because obviously this is coming from a album whose name stands outside of the canon of U2's discography. But either way, this is one of my favorite personal favorite tracks off this album, and it's awesome. Always Forever Now, like, this is another favorite of mine. This is probably one of the most upbeat tracks off this particular album. It really has that U2-esque vibe to it, at least as far as its melodic structure is concerned. I love how this track just keeps building and building and building, and you get these almost heavenly synthesizers coming in around almost the halfway point, and as you keep going, it just keeps rising and rising, and I keep expecting this to kind of keep getting higher until it eventually ends off on the ending to this track. And it's pretty cool. Like, there's very little lyrics on here. It's just Bono repeating always forever now. But either way, this track has a really great atmosphere, and I definitely like it. A Different Kind of Blue. This is a very short track here. It's more like a little small interlude here. I always get a robotic vibe from this particular track, and it really lends to like the ambience of this track. And I don't know if that's Brian Eno singing or if that's Adam Clayton singing, but whoever it is, even though their voice isn't really as accomplished, their voice still complements this song, believe it or not. Oh, and speaking of which, really quickly, to go back to Your Blue Room really fast, Adam Clayton makes his singing debut on that track, not as a lead vocal, but coming in at the last portion of Your Blue Room. Really, he makes very rare vocal appearances on U2 tracks. Live, he's more prominent, but on U2 tracks, it's very rare. So that's just one little trivia thing to know from Your Blue Room. Anyway, A Different Kind of Blue then eventually segues into the beach sequence. And it's a short but really sweet ambient number here. I really get the vibe of sitting on the beach somewhere, watching these seagulls fly past by me around, and just the peaceful ambient nature of this track is phenomenal, and it's awesome, and I really adore this track. And another track that I adore is Miss Sarajevo. Possibly my favorite track off this whole album. Bono has mentioned that this amongst all of other U2 songs, this is his most favorite from this collection, and it has a more orchestrated feel to it. And of course, as I've said before, this track is associated with the Bill Carter documentary of the same name, Miss Sarajevo. And in the middle part there, it features a amazing tenor vocal performance from the great and now unfortunately late Luciano Pavarotti. One of the great three tenors, along with fellow opera singers Placido Domingo and Jose Carreras. And I don't want to veer too much into this, but I have a big association with Luciano Pavarotti because I once watched one of their opera performances as a little kid, and I was absolutely mesmerized by these singers, including Pavarotti. So Pavarotti was a really important figure stone in my upbringing, in my childhood, and for him to guest star on this particular track and with just an immaculate, superb, fantastic vocal performance as only he can make it, just only makes this song all the more sweeter. His vocal performance is just simply immaculate and stellar and beautiful. It almost really brings tears to my eyes just listening to it. But Miss Sarajevo is one of the great tracks off this album. I definitely love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. That's Miss Sarajevo for you. Ito o Kashi. At least I think that's the name of this track. It's a much more weirder sounding, intimate track. Unfortunately, I cannot remember the name of the Japanese singer that sings on this track. I'm really sorry. I'll add her name on the annotation on the screen when I get the chance. But her, even though she sings in Japanese, her vocal stylings really complements this really odd sounding song. Really well, if I might add. It's not really nothing notable, but it's pretty good. It's okay. 1 minute warning. 1 minute warning. Of course, this track found itself on the Japanese anime Ghost in the Shell, and it really has this James Bond-esque style to it. Like I always feel like I'm a spy, like spying or infiltrating a military base, and I'm this really awesome spy agent who's has this his James Bond's gadgetry, his weapons on his belt and everything like that. Just all the cool James Bond esque gadgetry, and I always feel like that. It's a nice little soundbite in this particular album, which lends a feeling of espionage, spying or something. Next track, Corpse. These chains are way too long. The subtitle. One where Edge takes the lead vocal on this track, and of course, I don't know if you guys know this, but I love Edge's singing voice. Edge has some of the best backup vocals in the business, and this proves it. This is a fairly subdued minimal track, but and it's not amongst my favorites, but just for the factor that Edge sings this track just brings it up a notch for me. It's kind of weird sounding as the track keeps going on. It turns a little bit sounds kind of weird here, but it's nice. Also for the fact that Edge sings on this track. Elvis Ate America. This is a collaboration between Howie B and Bono, which it has a kind of a bouncy beat to it, and Bono reciting these Elvis Presley sayings in his lyrics, all the while Howie B is just continuously saying in between Bono's lyrical stanzas like Elvis, la, 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 Elvis, la, la, la. It's kind of strange sounding when you hear it, and that's Elvis Ate America. Plot 180. I can't remember. It's this track and another track here. I don't exactly remember that appeared in a film called Heat, but they only appeared very briefly. It's not like the other three tracks where they fully appeared in full track length on a film. But this track and another track, I can't remember exactly now. But Plot 180 and another track here appears very briefly in that film, Heat. And this track sounds a lot like 1 Minute Warning, at least to me. So it's nice, but I don't really see a point in it. And theme from the Swan. This is another favorite of mine. It's a little more melancholic sounding than all the other tracks, but it really lends a very cinematic feel to this particular album. And it's not really notable, but just the way that cello, the way that mournful cello sounds on this track, along with Edge just playing these very sad and very melancholic, dissonant guitar notes here, even at times kind of like gliding his fingers on his pick away from the guitar tail, from the frets, and just kind of like creating a very dissonant guitar noise that really, it doesn't heighten the tension of this track, but it only adds to the melancholy atmosphere to it. There's also the sound of rain falling down on a building somewhere in this track in the background. Either way, this is one of those cinematic tracks that is just amazing. At least for me, it's amazing. And the last track on this collection, theme from Let's Go Native. This track is a little bit more of U2 than Brian Eno. This has more of like that really catchy U2 quality to it. It has a kind of a dance vibe to this track. You can't really make out the lyrics. There are vocalizations from Bono and maybe Edge a little bit here in this track. You can't really make out what they're saying, but either way, their vocal contributions really lends to the awesome atmosphere of this track. And Adam Clayton's bass playing fantastic. It's really spot on. He really lends a very groove-esque, very groove-orientated vibe to his bass playing on this particular track, and it's a pretty cool way to end this album off with a track that makes you want to dance. And that's it. This has been a track review slash description of Passengers Original Soundtracks 1. Tell me what you think of this collection. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you consider this album in the canon of U2's discography? Do you not consider this album in the canon of U2's discography? What are your favorite tracks off this album? Or does this album not work for you at all? Please leave a comment in the comment section below, and that's it. Passengers Original Soundtracks 1. Mr. Music Fan. Take care, guys. See you later.